Welcome back, everybody. Alistair the Great, back at you with another video. I kind of want to talk about boomers, because boomers are not somebody I hate. I understand why a lot of people would hate them, because they seem like they're a very entitled and self-righteous generation, and I completely understand where people are coming from out of that sort of stuff. But I'm not here to antagonize boomers. In fact, I kind of want to do an open letter to them. I want to have a heart-to-heart with them. And this is going to be a purely raw video recording of me just talking to a mic and wage raging. Not even wage raging. That's the other channels. I want to talk to them and try and appeal to their interests. Because at the end of the day, we all have material interests. We all have interests that we want satisfied to one degree or another. And I want to talk about that. They really need to start paying attention to the younger generations. Because if you think things are bad now, they're about to get a hell of a lot worse. And I'm saying this to a generation that I'm well aware is rabidly anti-communist. And I'm saying that as somebody who is your stereotypical progressive millennial communist who probably, boomers stereotype and hate to no end. I am that which you hate, boomers. Okay? But I'm not here to deride you. I'm not here to mock you. I'm not here to finger wag at you, because I understand the position that you take and why you take the position that you had. If I had a $1 million 401k and 3 properties, 2 of which I rent out, where each of them, they have less than $1,000 a month mortgage payments, and I'm renting them out at a surcharge of $3,000 a month to some poor Gen Z tenant, I would be pretty comfortable that I probably wouldn't even be making YouTube videos anymore. I probably would just be living life and enjoying life because, I've got everything I want out of life. And I can understand that. Because it's human nature to defend something that has worked for us. If it works for us, it obviously must work for everybody else. And everybody else that it didn't work for, it must be because they're lazy and they didn't pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Because we're talking about a generation of people who quite literally could go to work part-time and afford to go to college at the same time. And so, in their eyes, in your eyes, you think that it works. It works for you. But I know you deep down know in your heart that it does not work for everybody, and you know this. And so that's why I'm trying to have a heart-to-heart with you, is because deep down you may cope about it, or you may know deep down and you might laugh at the younger generations of what they're going through, is because you've got your lot and everybody else be damned. It actually does affect you. It really does. Okay? Because it's a very dangerous thing to create an entire generation of propertyless people. And saying that as a progressive, stereotypically millennial communist, late millennial communist, is that you couldn't be making my job any easier than I thought it would be. I might be a micro channel. You might point out how tiny my audience is now. But the people like Philosophical Gamer, Millennial Steam, and these, wage rager YouTubers, because that's what they are, they're not communists, dude. They're just people who are upset at the terms and conditions of capitalism. They're tired of corporations in 1 second funding think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, which talk about how greed, self-interest, and individuality are good things, and that's what made America strong. And they talk all this pro-capitalist propaganda, and the reason communism doesn't work is because it's an authoritarian Stalinist regime, and it's a command economy where terms and conditions are dictated from top to bottom. And it's funny, is because most of the people that you're calling communists today, like Philosophical Gamer, Millennial Steam, and the Wage Rage channels that exist on YouTube, are not communists. They believe everything you say. They believe in the same values you say. And they probably, if I were to ask them if they believed in the same values that I have, namely a command economy, or not even command economy, but just a centrally planned economy, they'd probably say, no, I don't agree with your political philosophy, Alistair. I'm a free market capitalist. In fact, I just want boomers to live by the same values that they espouse. And that's what they will all tell you. Because they're still capitalists. They're not communists just because they're pro-worker. They're capitalists in the sense is that they believe, that you should be consistent. If you say capitalism, what makes capitalism great is self-interest and, working for yourself and doing your own thing, then it should be okay for workers to think this way. It's not wrong. That's why they say these sorts of things, because they're trying to appeal to your interests and say, we have shared common values that, maybe you'll understand and sympathize with. If you understand that, what we're going through, maybe you can understand why we're that way. But your generation is not doing that, boomers. All you're doing is antagonizing the younger generations, and you're making it easier now than ever to export these ideas to them. People who would have never listened to me 5 years ago will listen to me now and listen to the ideas that I'm espousing, even though they disagree with it right now, is because I understand what they're going through. I understand the situation they're in. I know what it's like to exist in an economy where you're never going to own anything, and you're consistently mocked and berated by older generations for not being able to get the same level of success they had when the system was rigged in their favor, and it's rigged against you in against this generation. Okay? And so my warning is to you is that if you don't want these people to be communist, you really should listen to what they're talking about. You should really listen to their grievances. Because I know while your companies fund the Heritage Think Tank Foundations, what does every corporate HR department train their workers to do? Do they train them with the same capitalist garbage that they tell the Heritage Foundation to spew everywhere else and lecture other countries about? No. Every HR department tries to lecture the worker that works at their company that they need to treat the company as if it's their own, as if they own it, even though that they don't. They don't give them the pay to recognize that fact. In fact, they try to dictate terms and conditions from top to bottom like an authoritarian communist regime. Interesting. You want to basically have the relationship of, a top-down hierarchy when it benefits you, but then you love to talk about self-interest when it comes to your way. And so, for the Gen Z in the audience who are listening to this video while I talk to boomers about the hypocrisy that they have, let's also talk about that I understand their mentality. Back in 22, I remember when Democratic Socialists would ask Nancy Pelosi if she believed in banning insider trading for Congress is because they exist in the state. It's kind of corrupt that they can make and craft policies that benefit some corporations and manipulate the market and benefit others and not some. And that Congress should be prohibited from engaging in stock trading while in office. And what did Nancy Pelosi say? We're a free market country and we're allowed to do whatever we want. Is because that is just the values of this country. We're a free market country. When it came to the railroad workers who decided, we're tired of these unfair wages, we want to get paid better, and so we're going to do a strike, is because we can voluntarily decide in a free market society not to sell our labor to our employer, that they can just walk away and, do a strike because, the state's has to respect individuality. What did Nancy Pelosi do then? She petitioned to Congress to make it illegal for the railroad workers to strike. How and in what name? In the name of the collective good, is that if the railroad workers strike, the collective good was at stake, and they were good little socialists talking about altruism and the benefit of the collective of society when it came to the workers. But with the capitalists, it's all about self-interest and greed. And so this is my warning to you. You cannot dictate one set of rules to one group of people and then hypocritically be self-serving. You want to know why the right got sick and tired of moralism? Because moralism, more often than not, was a sick disguise for a one-way street of rules that benefited one party at the expense of another. That is why myself and many other people, when we became right-wingers, we got tired of the left because we saw a hypocritical moralist framework that only wanted to facilitate a one-way street that benefited one party at the expense of another. And what you're doing now through these think tanks where you talk about self-serving yourself, where you talk about, self-interest and greed are a good thing. I don't doubt that you believe that, but you don't like it when other people do the exact same thing you do. And so you morally finger wag about how we need to think about the collective good whenever it's somebody who is not a part of the property class decides to stand up for their own self-interest. Just like when Nancy Pelosi decided to shut down the railroad workers' strike in 2022 in the name of the collective good and how much it would cause the stock market to tumble. All of a sudden, the matter of the state enforcing people to do things was in the interest of the capitalist class. And so, here's my message to you boomers, because this is still in the early stages. I remember when the left used to call everybody a Nazi. And eventually, while they might have agreed with some of the egalitarian principles of the left at the time, they started giving different ideas a chance. And I know that pisses off anybody who's a moralist, because it's true. Truth hurts. It does. I know it hurts. But that's what's going to happen, my boomer friend, is that if you don't start being consistent and showing that capitalism brings prosperity through self-interest and one finding their own path in civilization, if you don't allow people to do their own thing, they're going to start looking at alternative ideas. Right now, I don't doubt Philosophical Gamer is telling his audience and pointing out that boomers act the same way that they decry about the communists over in the other sections of the world. And I know most people think that way because we've all been taught from an early age that free market capitalism is the true freedom within society, and that everything else is this evil authoritarianism. But if you actually look at history, like I have, and most people who've looked beyond the propaganda that we've been told since we were kids, we recognize that's not the case. We recognize what you do when worker movements start standing up for themselves. I know how nasty you get, but here's kind of the thing. If you don't start making headway and at this impasse that you're treating towards Gen Z, they will start going to the other side. There's no other way around this. They're going to give alternative ideas a chance, and it doesn't matter how much censorship, no matter how much you scoff and laugh at it, no matter how much you pearl clench, it's not going to go your way. It might not even be me who's going to be the head of whatever workers' revolution that you're going to have on your hand if you don't start enfranchising people. Because there's nothing more dangerous than creating an entire generation of propertyless people who have nothing left to lose. I said at the beginning of the videos that I understand why you take the position that you have with capitalism, because it benefited you so much. Less than 3% of your generation are communists, and I know why. You lived in the prosperous age of American society. And all Gen Z is asking is for you to give them the opportunity to share in the greatness of the American Republic. And if you deny them that, and you continue to create an entirely properless generation of Americans, they're going to start adopting political philosophies that benefit them. Do you think if the vast majority, do you think an entire generation of propertyless people are going to respect the property rights of a tiny minority of people who own everything? Because if you think it's going to go down that way, and you're going to have your World Economic Forum Nestle dictatorship where everybody rents everything, and then we're eternally thankful to work for the eternal boomer who owns everything, and the older generations who own everything, and a handful of capitalists who own everything. Like, I hate to break it to you. It's not going to go the way you think it is. You can censor my videos, you can laugh at me, and you can mock and berate me. But that's what's going to happen. And you know what? I'll leave this video up. And you're free to prove me wrong. I'm always the kind of person. My ideas are flexible. I'm a pragmatist. I believe in prosperity first. Honestly, I'd still be a libertarian if I believed that you were actually had some semblance of logic to actually be fair, at least with free market capitalism. I'd still be a libertarian. But, I recognize that's not how reality works. I personally know what's going to happen, what you're going to do. But I'm going to let you, decide that for yourself, is because I can't do anything. Gen Z can't do anything. They don't have any political power. Boomers are the ones who have political power to change the situation, to share the greatness of American capitalism with the younger generations while you still can. Think about it. The reason the left went unpopular is because while they completely neglected what was actually materially true, they were able to relate to people's real concrete issues better than everybody. The right is that the left was unable to do that sort of stuff. So the right came in, talked about these things, while the left called them Nazis for even engaging in different ideas. And you're doing the exact same thing the left did 10 years ago by calling everybody communist, just like the left used to say everybody was a Nazi. You understand that you're pushing people into a corner. You should be really worried that you're creating an entire properless generation. Again, I'll say this again, and I don't care how yikesy it is. You can clench your pearls all you want about the situation, but the fact that the nation celebrated the murder of a healthcare CEO, I want you to take that to heart. I'm begging you to please listen at this point, because I've been on this rodeo before, and I am watching, and you can tell me I'm wrong. The political tides are about to change, and you can hold me to it. We can place a bet right here, right now, that in 5 years' time, the political landscape is going to be vastly different than it is today. And the establishment media and the establishment personalities are going to go to the grave dying on this hill. The Quarter Tonners media complex is going down the shitter. Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire. The writing is on the wall. And you still have time to save face. People still believe in you. I don't, personally. Like I said, I'm a communist. I'm just basically telling you what nobody else is going to tell you. Because a lot of the times, people, when they're talking about problems, they don't know how to address it. They don't know how to speak about it. They don't know how to propose solutions to it. I'm giving you my 2 cents. If you want to stop this thing, you really need to reevaluate your position. Because, again, they're going to go to the other side. They're going to start listening to other ideas if you don't change it. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the video. That's my 2 cents. This is my warning to the older generations to bring reason to your madness, hopefully. I hope you listen, because honestly, like, if I'm right, again, I've said this before, it's not going to be pretty.